Hey.
Hey.
Hi, Darlene.
Hi.
My name is Tara. So awkward.
And I am Darlene Ho.
And so Darlene and I have been friends for almost 20 years. We met doing theater together in college at USF in Tampa and have kept up with each other over the years. Darlene is one of my favorite people. She's like my own personal Oprah.
Happy to be mentioned in the same sentence with Oprah in any regard.
You are very wise, my friend. Very wise. And I love that you've helped students of mine over the years that have come to New York. So you live in New York.
Yeah.
You're an actor there.
I'm a professional actress, and I do all sorts of mediums. I do theater, straight play, musical theater. I do commercials, television, new media, voiceover. And so one of the great things about my career is that I get to travel a lot around the country. I get to work in different areas and regions, and I get something of a bird's eye view into the life of people across the country.
That's really nice.
And it's fun and it's exciting.
Yeah.
But I'm, a creative as you are.
Yes.
And so all of the things that are happening in daily life, I kind of see and look at and approach from a creative artist, creator mindset.
I would say that, and you and I were talking about this before, that we've been really blessed to kind of grow up in the world of theater because from a very young age, you get to put on someone else's shoes and look at their life from a different point of view. And so it just makes you're just raised very compassionate and empathetic. And you are, because we've been in the world of theater for so long and acting, you are in television, you're surrounded by all these different types of people, and you have to work with them, and all of you are equal, you know what I mean? And so you get taught at a very young age that that's what makes the world really beautiful and lovely. And I've just been really lucky to have gotten to, grow up in that atmosphere.
Yeah, me too. I was essentially a shy child, and I don't think and if it wasn't for theater, I probably would have stayed in a very shy, bookish, reserved, kind of life and way of approaching the world. But it was the theater that really brought me out of my shell and taught me how to have a voice. And so now I use that voice to champion, people and being open. And part of my calling is just about helping people to breathe and be in the moment that they're in, and to be okay in that moment,
It's so hard. So, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. There's a hashtag going around right now, I can't breathe. And I can tell you that I actually personally have been having trouble breathing lately. And I've been trying to meditate every day. That's a new practice for me. And I'm finding in that space that I'm literally having trouble breathing. And so I called you because I just wanted to know, have you ever seen anything like this before at this level? I mean, what does, for me, not feeling like I can't breathe, I can't imagine what it feels like to you. So I just wanted to know.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you frame it in that way, because in the way of that particular hashtag. And for those who are kind of wondering what we might be talking about, we're talking about, of course, George Floyd, who was a ordinary Black man who was in the process of being arrested or encountering the police. He was killed. Killed because the police officer who ended his life was kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But backtracking from that and kind of pulling back and looking at it from a broader place, we're also in the middle of this pandemic. And the coronavirus has kept us all in our houses, um, and I have noticed in myself a sustained, heightened anxiety and level of stress in my own life.
Yes,
And what I noticed early in that process, just with coronavirus, far before this particular thing happened, I noticed that my ability to absorb additional stressful stimuli, so anything that was happening outside of coronavirus, from normal stuff like, challenges at going to the grocery store, or you know what I mean, paying bills, or those things caused me almost to go into panic attack mode. And what I would do to deal is I would do a common exercise that we do as actors, which I would lay on the floor, feel my breath, release the body in muscle groups moving from your feet all the way up through your crown chakra. And I would do that just because I was feeling like you. I was feeling like I couldn't breathe. I would feel like my world would start spinning, or, and so it's really interesting to hear you put it in that particular frame, because it's true. I think a lot of people might look at this situation, might look at the state of race discrimination in the United States, and they might not know how to deal.
Right. I mean, that's very true with me. I don't know how to deal. I don't know what I should be saying, shouldn't be saying. I don't know. Should I reach out to my friends and ask them how they're doing? I'm just feeling and I'm sure the being quarantined has a lot to do with that. As like you said, it's like sort of snowballed its way. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I want to echo what you're saying. It feels a lot like I have to stop and force myself to calm down, breathe. And then when this started happening, I was like, I also want to throw things and kick and scream.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not Black, and so I just wanted your viewpoint. Sorry, I don't mean to be redundant, but I just wanted to know what it feels like for you. And sorry, go ahead. I'll let you come back. I'll let you go back to what you were saying.
It creates a visceral, physical reaction. The stress, the residual traumas of being or having had racist encounters, it creates not only for Black people, but also for people of all races and all walks of life. Because whether or not you, no matter your race, you have experiences around racism that can potentially bring you to a stressful point. And so, we're all in this boat together. We are not feeling exactly the same thing because there are different degrees to everyone's experience. I'm not feeling the same thing as other women are, or other women of color, or even other Black women.
Sure.
There's a spectrum, of feelings and emotion, and it's all, but it all deserves our attention. It's, our attention and our compassion and our empathy is warranted in this moment.
And this certainly isn't the first time. I mean, you and I, are you 40 yet? I'll be 40 this year.
Girl, don't be putting my age out there.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No, listen, I have a sibling who passed away about 10 years ago, and she died when she was 39. And when I turned 40, I was so proud to be 40 because my sister didn't make it. And so, yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes. I'm excited for 40. But with that said, you know, we're middle aged now, so this isn't the first time that we have seen something like this. But I must say, I mean, seen something like, you know, people being really upset. But it is the first time I've seen something at this level in my
Right.
lifetime.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, I get excited for the youth and how passionate they are, but I'm
Hmm.
also I'm a little bit jaded, you know, worried that nothing's going to change. I'm like in this weird, like, good, I'm glad there that so many people are so revved up, but I'm also afraid that the next thing that happens in the world is just going to squash it, and we'll be moving on again. I mean, how do you feel about all the protesting and the rioting and the and what have you?
Well, there's a couple of things that I do want to unpack about this moment.
Okay.
Number one, yes, this is an incredibly unique cultural moment. No one has been in this moment before, and there's a couple of reasons for that. And this is all my personal opinion, right? I don't claim
Sure.
to be any expert in any field. Later on, I, pulled some references for actual experts that people can listen to and
Great.
avail themselves of that I do. So I'm just from my own perspective, this is something that no one's ever witnessed before. And that is because, number one, it's been 100 years since we have been in a global pandemic.
Good point.
So the catalyst for all of this that we are seeing, the facilitator of this uprising, is this pandemic that we've never been in before. Even in the civil rights movement in the 60s, the catalyst for that movement was not a pandemic.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it's a unique space that we're in. Also, I believe that in this moment, we're really addressing a few specific things. We're addressing
Okay.
police brutality. We're
Yeah.
addressing systemic and institutional racism. Racism for me is an onion. And once you peel away one layer, there's another layer underneath that layer that then has to be dealt with. And you peel away that layer, then there's another layer that has to be dealt with. And really, that's a larger onion that we're talking about biases in general. So
Right.
we're bringing in LGBTQIA history, we're bringing in women's movement history, we're bringing in disabled rights. All of those things, we're able to deal with one, and then we peel it away, and we can deal with the level that's deeper than that. So
I'm hearing systemic. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, specifically at this point in time, we're dealing with police brutality, institutional racism, systemic racism, and we wouldn't be able to deal with that had we not already dealt with the previous movements. So yes, it's a unique moment because it's a next step.
It's a next step.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, that does make sense. That makes sense. So I'm hearing the word systemic racism a lot in my daily life. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, so I'm going to actually read this because this is what we would call something of a standard definition. And for me, just personally, part of the reason why there are certain aspects of this that I'm going to read is because accuracy is important to me.
Yeah.
And in all of our being empowered, we should be empowered in a way that is not bent by our personal opinion. There's fact, and then there's experience and opinion, and we want to be able to delineate what those things are. So systemic racism, as it's defined, includes the complex array of anti-Black practices. Okay, so the unjustly gained political economic power of white people, the continuing economic and other resource inequalities along racial lines, racist ideologies, and how they are rationalized and maintained in order to keep white privilege and power in place. Systemic racism means the core racist realities affected in each part of U.S. society. So we're talking about the economy, politics, education, religion, and familial relationships. So we're talking about a big
It's a lot.
thing, right? When we talk about systemic racism, people use it. I use it as an umbrella term.
Okay.
If we're talking about institutional racism, police brutality comes out of institutional racism, meaning there's the institution of criminal justice, which protects police when they commit crimes against people of color.
I see.
So smaller, we have like the bigger egg, and then there's a smaller egg, and then there's the the individual egg inside of it.
What are they called? The little China dolls?
Yeah, they're like Russian
dolls. They're not China dolls. Russian dolls. You're right. No, it's Russian dolls. Yeah. Excuse me. So you and I were talking a little bit about how alarming, how stunned we were to see the footage of this man, killing this other man, and how not only could this have been the first time that this cop had been violent, you just don't come out the gate and kill somebody. That's very unlikely, and if it does happen, it's very rare. But everyone has a phone in their hand now. There are so many cameras looking at everything all the time. So, I didn't know that this systemic racism or institutionalized racism was a thing until I started seeing video after video after video of someone in power taking the life of someone who is unarmed and not a threat. And it feels bigger than any, than me or any. I don't, like I said, I can't breathe. I know that wasn't a question. There wasn't even a question there. I'm sorry.
In our previous conversation, I think the thing that brought us into that conversation, we were talking about entry points of understanding, and what those look like for people who are not the targeted group. So if you're not a Black person, if you're not a Black man specifically, how do you connect to this moment? And so, we started talking about, this particular police officer, and I don't know his name. Even if I did know his name at this point, I probably wouldn't want to repeat it because we don't want to give him any publicity or any shine.
No.
But this particular officer committed a horrific crime that was preceded surely by other crimes.
Surely.
We could say, of course he exhibited these, you don't just start by murdering somebody in public on the street.
Right.
Criminal pathology will tell you that no one starts there. You're building to that apex. So, this particular man, of course, he exhibited these behaviors at home with his family, with his colleagues at work. Of course he did. And we're learning now from his history, his documented work history, that he's been involved in multiple accusations of police brutality. Exactly.
Yes.
So, so this didn't start as
he didn't wake up that day and say, today's the day. No, it was a snowball effect, and no one did anything about it.
Right. So what was probably domestic abuse, workplace abuse. None of those, stops happened. None of those things stopped him. And now it turned into an instance of racist violence on the street. So, those of us who you might feel like you don't understand, or you can't put yourself in the position of somebody who's been the victim of racist violence. You know what it's like to be vulnerable. You know what it's like to be targeted. in other areas of your life. And you can use those areas and those experiences as entry points to understand the trauma of people who have experienced racist violence.
I shared with you that my cousin adopted before I adopted my son. She adopted a little boy. His name is Harper, and he's African American. And my cousin, and we're first cousins. We look very similar. So, you know, she and I are a lot alike. And so I can make the easy jump, the way that I connect myself, and I try to understand better, even though I know that I will never, you know, fully understand, is that I think about how easily it could be that my son is African American, because we both adopted from the same agency. You know, it's just, and I think about the way that she's going to have to talk to him versus the way I will have to talk to my own son. And if it makes me afraid for my cousin's son, you know, and so I get there kind of easily that way. And then I become very sad. But if there was one thing that you wanted your white friends to know at a core level about what this feels like, or what the experience is like for you as a person of color, what would that be?
Well, there are a few things that I would want my white friends to know.
Sure, yeah.
Where I would start is that I would want them to understand the depth of pain really that is experienced when someone is on the receiving end of racism and or discrimination. It is a traumatic experience. It's life-changing. We know that it is meant to shift the trajectory of your dreams and your abilities. It's a deeply, deeply traumatic experience. It is painful. It hurts bad. And I don't know that my white friends really understand. You know, I made a decision a few years ago, after the last election, that I wanted to be more vocal about my own personal experiences and encounters with race and discrimination.
Great.
And that's because I felt over the course of that election that my white friends really didn't understand my experience. They didn't understand that I was experiencing racism and discrimination on a regular basis. And here's why. I hold myself accountable. We all have ways that we can hold ourselves accountable. I hold myself accountable for a lot because dealing with racism and pain is traumatic for me. And I don't want to deal with it all the time. At least I didn't at that point in my life. I didn't want to talk about it all the time. I wanted to be able to move on. I wanted to be able to focus on other things, as all of us often do when we're traumatized. But what I realized in my putting it away, because it made me uncomfortable, was that my friends, my white friends, didn't know that there was anything wrong. They didn't know that I was being followed in stores. They didn't know that I had been denied promotions at work. They didn't know that I had been called a nigger in public. My friends didn't know that these things were happening. And that was because it was so hard for me to deal with that I didn't want to talk about it, because I didn't want to feel the pain myself. So I challenged myself, you know, a few years ago to really to be outspoken about it, because I need my friends to understand that I'm a pudgy middle-aged Black woman and I get followed in stores on a regular basis by security because I presume they feel like I want to steal. And I am the most like there's nothing. When you see me, you don't think, there's no way you can think here comes a criminal. Like it's just
I agree. Yeah. You're very, very, you're very sweet. You're very unassuming. Can I just tell you, I don't know if you can hear my phone is pinging. So I'm sorry if you can hear that because I don't know how to turn it off.
No, I can't hear it.
Oh, good. Okay. Can I tell you how oblivious I am? When you said at first you started talking about how you realized your white friends didn't know your experience. When you said you were followed in stores, I had no idea what you meant, like by who. I thought maybe there were like men following you that wanted to hit on you. So when you said it's security following you because they think that's how oblivious I am. That I can't even wrap my head around why anyone would follow you in a store other than to want to hit on you. Like because I'm a woman and I know that happens and it's annoying, but it's whatever, it is part of that. So yeah, it's mind blowing to me that anybody would follow you thinking that you would steal something at the CVS. What?
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable reality that I regularly deal with, even as I was followed recently by a police officer on a trail. I was on, here in St. Petersburg. I was out on the Pinellas Trail, and there's a small stretch of the trail that runs adjacent to several connected parking lots. And I go out early in the morning, 7 o'clock, usually between 7 and 8. And I was followed by this cop. He was on the roadway that ran parallel with the trail, and he's just following me. And I thought to myself, I'm in workout gear. Like, I'm not dressed in regular clothes. Like, I'm in workout gear. I've got my earbuds in and my armband and all of this. Like, you can tell that I'm out there.
Like a Nike commercial.
Purposes.
Yeah.
Right. And the only purpose of following a pudgy, like I said, pudgy middle-aged woman who's in workout gear at 7 o'clock in the morning is to make her feel unwelcome or that her presence is a threat of some sort. So, these are things that happen to me on a regular basis, and I've gotten to the place now where I speak about them openly and regularly, but also because I want to demystify racism, and I want to disarm racism, the discussions around discrimination and racism. I want my friends, all of my friends, to feel comfortable and confident talking about these subjects, because if we keep sweeping it under the rug, if we keep ignoring it, then we can't handle it, we can't resolve it, because everybody feels like they're walking on eggshells.
That's exactly right. And that's for me, that's such a gift. And let me just say, it is not your job to educate me about racism, right? This is just a gift that you're giving to me. I don't want anyone to think that I assume that because you're Black and you're my friend that you owe me some kind of explanation about what it's like to be you. You don't, but you have allowed space for your friends. I just think it's really lovely and wonderful that you've created safe space for your white friends to say, I don't understand. I don't know what to do. I'm sad. I'm hurt. I'm scared. I'm angry, but I don't know how to begin to help, And I think that you have created a really safe space to say, this is how you help, or let's talk about it, or what does that, this is what it looks like for me. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for, listen, it only works if there's someone on the receiving end of it, if there's someone listening. So, thank you for being open enough to happens for all things. It comes from listening first. So,
let's talk real quick about, I'm sorry, just jumping. Are you there? Oh, you're paused. You paused on me. Is your internet maybe glitching? It's okay.
Yes, I have to. Well, if someone is texting me.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, I'll just cry over here by myself. Not awkward. I did want to ask. We got a little off the topic. I did want to ask, how you feel about what the protesting, the rioting, the looting,
Mhm.
where you stand on all of that. You know, some of us certainly feel like it's not safe to go out and protest. So, you know, I have friends that are out there every day. They run the gamut, you know. Some people are upset
Mhm.
about protesters. I mean, where do you feel? Where do you fall?
Um,
I guess is what I meant to say.
for me, specifically talking about protesting,
Okay.
protesting is as American as apple pie. You know,
Yeah, it's true.
we
It's well
protest
said.
every day in many different ways. Is it necessary for you to be, you know, I here's what I would say. I would
Whoops.
encourage people who have. Can you hear me
I
still?
can. I just lost. There you go. Okay, I'm back. You would encourage?
Okay. I would encourage uh, people to go out and protest,
Okay.
especially if they never have before. It is a
Okay.
uniquely American experience that
Yeah,
is
okay.
protected, a protected right of yours. Um, and so, if you've never had the experience and you're passionate about, this is a great time to go out and have that experience of standing in the street along with other people who believe what you believe and publicly stating where you feel our society should navigate. So I would always
Okay.
encourage people to do as much as they can, but there are many different ways of protesting that we all do every day. You know, we choose not to watch certain television shows. We
Sure, yeah.
choose not to, or not to go to certain, venues or businesses.
Yes,
We choose
yes.
not to associate
It's
with
true.
certain groups or, communities. We so we protest all the time about a lot of
It's
different
true.
things, you know. I protest by using an Android phone instead of an
Ah!
Apple. We protest in many, many, many different ways. Now, so yes, I believe very deeply in protesting and using many different avenues of
Okay.
sharing your voice and speaking out. Rioting,
Yeah, tell me how
specifically
you feel about
rioting,
rioting.
is a different thing. So
Okay.
what is happening in our streets right now, I would not classify as rioting. Words
Okay.
are important to me. Terminology matters. I classify what's happening in our street right now as an uprising.
Oh,
For
okay.
me, the difference is, and this is purely personal, for me, rioting is spurned on, the difference is causation, right? Rioting
Right.
are selfishly and vengefully motivated. Rioting is what fans do when they come out of the arena and your team beat my team, and so we're going to fight each other outside the arena and we're going to tear up the local businesses. Um, Uprisings are different. Uprisings are socially motivated. They are about where society is and where we want society to go.
Okay, this is
So,
very, very good, Darlene. I hadn't thought about it as being, you're right, because we didn't really go to a college with like a huge football team. When we were in college, our football team was small and we were in theater, and my
mhm.
husband went to Ohio State University, and sorry, my text messages keep beeping. So if it does end up on the recording, I'm so sorry, everybody. I don't know how to turn it off. But he said that they would set couches on fire and put them in dumpsters. And after, so that you're right. That, geez, Louise, ladies, stop texting me. Um,
This is what we get for being amazing women who are in demand and then also recording in the middle of the
right?
day.
They're all talking at the same time. And I always thought, like, that sucks. Like, where did that couch come from? And who lost their couch that night? You know, like, it seemed like you said, very selfish. Also, they were
Mhm,
drunk 20-year-olds. So that's a
mhm,
different rabbit hole to go down. But you're right. Uprising is when something at its core, like something is broken, and
mhm,
people have been saying it's broken for so long, and
Mm-hmm.
other people aren't hearing it, and so they have to get
Mm-hmm.
louder and louder until they do.
Right. And America has a deep and intimate history with uprisings.
Mm-hmm.
Uprisings are the primary catalyst for fundamental change in this country. This country would not even be here or founded had it not been for an uprising amongst people who do not want to live under the authoritative thumb of a royal family. So
That's right.
we, so as Americans, we should not be afraid or intimidated by uprisings. Now, that being said, everything from the American Revolution, Stonewall, women's suffrage, abolition, all of these were catalyzed by uprisings of ordinary people who wanted fundamental change in
Yes.
society. And
Yes.
so, and in America and our country, because we are a democratic republic, that's why our protests are protected, because our founding fathers understood that the change should come from the people. It should come from the bottom up. So I do have a problem with rioting. I do not have a problem with uprisings. And there's a very big difference. What's happening now is an uprising, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should understand that it's necessary, and we should understand our own history with it, and that this is the way things change in our country.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. I mean, I certainly, geez Louise, I wish I knew how to turn my messages off. I get very sad to see businesses ruined, and, you know, small town, you know, people just trying to make a living, all of that taken away from them. I do think, however, that it's worth mentioning that there are opportunists out there that will dive headfirst into anything that they can turn violent, and that
Right.
a lot of that isn't somebody trying to make change. A lot of that is an opportunist who wants to set things on fire and beat people up because they have violent nature. And I think that there's, you know, I think they're separate. I think some of that getting out of control stuff is, that's me personally. I think it's not coming from a place of I want change. I think it's coming from a place of I want to destroy things.
You know, one of the things that I feel very strongly about uprisings, specifically when we're talking about young people, because they often tend to have so much unbridled energy.
Yes, they do.
What happens with uprisings is, like you were saying earlier, the voices of those who are victims or being discriminated against in whatever way, shape, or form and want change, the voices of those people have not been heard. So we cannot say we're so upset. We're both very upset about damage to businesses and structures or what have you, but that we also, because the reason that happened is because we had ignored all previous peaceful calls for change. So to say that we are only concerned about those businesses, which I know that that's not what you're saying, but there are a lot of people out there who are just saying that.
Sure, and it could sound like that. Yeah.
Right.
I lost you again.
Is to say, is to shirk your, to have that, to concern for those businesses that have received damage, is to, hold on.
It's okay. Take your time.
I'm sorry. I got messages coming in too.
It's new for us doing this. We've never done this before, so.
Yeah. Hold on just one second. I'm going to send him a message and tell him, okay, thank you.
It's fine. Take your time. I wish somebody could school me real quick on how to turn off my messages, because I just want them to stop dinging. While you're writing him back, I do just want to say again, thank you for talking to me today, and that you're a blessing in my life. I'm gonna say all the nice things about you while you're not listening.
A really lovely friend. The reason why he's messaging me is because he is a friend of mine who he's a white male, and he's done a lot of work, a lot of his own internal work um, on addressing his issues with racism and discrimination. Now, he's a gay man, so he understands a lot. He already has an advantage to many, many people. But he's done a lot of work as far as racism is concerned, because he wants to be able to understand that issue. And so I told him that we were having a conversation about this today. And so that's why he keeps texting me. Good. Because I'm sure he just keeps thinking of like new things, that he wants me to talk about. But but to say that we may only be concerned about the businesses, the damages to those businesses that find themselves in the crosshair, is to shirk our own responsibility and not listening previously. A lot of young people get frustrated, they get angry, and they lose control, and they go out and they're doing this because we didn't do what we were supposed to do in order to lead. And had we led in the way that we really should have, then these young people would not have to break windows and start fires and scream and yell. So we have to turn it's kind of like when a child is acting out in school. The parents then have to say, okay, what's happening in our home that's causing our child to act out? Children rarely act out just for their own, just on their own. It's right. It's usually a symptom of a problem and not the problem itself. So,
yes, I see that with my own child all the time.
Yeah.
If I'm not listening,
listen. That's not to say that Sorry, go ahead. If you're not listening.
If I'm not listening to him, he's 4. He gets very loud and very angry, and and there are times, and I started practicing telling him it's okay to be angry, because it is, I'm going to sound so woo-woo, but it is okay to feel your feelings, but it is not okay because he will hit. He will even hit himself sometimes just to get my attention, and so we try to have that conversation about it's okay to be angry, but you're not allowed to hurt anyone. And so I think that some of us are afraid, for other people getting hurt and other people getting killed out of the anger. And what I hear you saying is, then we need to change, because if we don't, like George Floyd did get killed out of anger. So what's the difference?
Right. There's a concept known as militant peace, which is used, oftentimes when we're talking about conflict, war conflict, where you are instituting peace by having a militarized presence in a space. And so these protesters who are out are attempting to institute a militant peace. What they're saying is, we are stopping the status quo. The status quo is not going to be allowed to proceed until there is a fundamental shift in what's happening. And that is leadership. Yes. That is leadership. Yes. That is pro-action, and leadership. And so what we have to do is, we can band together and make sure that these companies that that are affected by their windows being broken out or being looted
Sure.
or what have you. We can make sure that those businesses can come back and flourish. But
That's a great
it doesn't
idea.
help, right? It doesn't help. And let me just say this: there are a lot of business owners. I read comments by one woman. She had a small shop on a street that the street had been looted and her shop had been burned out and looted. And she said, listen, I understand I won't be able to come back from this. I understand, the cost of what's happened. But she said, I don't want to deter attention to my personal loss. The bigger picture has to do with this police brutality and institutionalized racism, and that has to fundamentally change. And I've heard more than one business owner say that.
Wow.
So we have to applaud those people, and then we have to join hands once we can bring about change to make sure that those businesses come back.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. I had not heard of that, but it makes sense that you have to sacrifice for change. Not that they signed up to sacrifice for change, but instead, I saw a lovely story on the news the other night where protesters curfew had hit, but unfortunately it seems that they had been cornered in a place where they couldn't necessarily leave before getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that they didn't want to leave, and maybe they didn't. I wasn't there with them. But there was a man, and he happened to be an Indian man. I just thought all the different races, coming together was a really beautiful picture. Who had, it was like, it wasn't in New York, but they're like the New York townhouses that are really tall. And he just stepped out of his house and he said, as many people that can come inside my house, you can stay in my house overnight. And it was so beautiful. And he took 70. And it just so happened to be 70 African American people into his house. And they said they stayed up all night. He fed them. They sang songs. They got to know each other. When curfew was lifted at 6 a.m., and a huge media crew was there to watch them all just walk out and leave. And you should sacrifice your night so that these people don't get arrested, especially if what they're trying to do is peace. They were being peaceful, but they were cornered. It showed them being kind of like cattle herded into this area where they couldn't back out of, and I thought that was really a lovely way for him to show his support for what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of these protesters, the vast majority of them are peaceful protesters. They're not, they're just people, they're peaceful people who are tired of seeing the violence repeatedly depicted on their cell phones and television screens and on the news. And so they're just ordinary folks like you and I, but they want fundamental change, and they're going to do what has to be done in order to bring about that change. And there are some bad actors who are out there who are, there's been many reports in this specific uprising of people, coming in from unknown outside sources who are just pretending to be part of the movement, but are only there to break out windows and are only there to loot, are only there to start fires. So who knows, even that's something new as well. That's a new tactic that the enemies of justice and peace are using in order to make the movement
press
itself.
upon to move the agenda of we're not all equal, to move that agenda forward. And you're right. That's I hadn't thought about that either. That's some premeditated stuff right there.
Yeah, it's a fight. It's a fight.
So I don't know if I'm going to go out and protest. I might after having this conversation. I've been invited.
Have you ever protested before?
I've never protested before. The only
Girl,
other
you
time
gotta
that
get in.
I was a teacher when Sandy Hook happened, and there was a march downtown St. Pete, and had I not been working that day, I would have gone. So many of my students were gone, and so many of it just didn't work out that I could go. That was the only other time that I really felt the call. So I might now, but let's say that for whatever reason, there's so many various reasons that someone may not feel comfortable protesting, but they believe deeply in wanting to help. What are some things that we can do to make sure that, that we help?
Marching in the streets is not for everyone. There are a lot of people who have conditions that would prevent them. Although I saw a 100-year-old man on the news the other day who was being held up by a police officer and another gentleman, and he said, I have to go march. I have to go march. So if you can, I highly suggest that there are a couple of things that I highly suggest for every American. I suggest that every American go to Washington, D.C. at least one time in their life and see your nation, meet with your congressperson, which you totally can do. You can walk into their office and say, hi, my name's Darlene. I live in your district. What's up, guys? Here are the things that I'm concerned about.
Just like a roll. Here it is.
It's true. And listen, they love it and they will listen to you. I highly suggest that every American make at least one pilgrimage or trip to Washington, D.C. at least once in their life. And I suggest that every American really protest, meaning going out to a physical, open air street protest or rally.
Okay.
And that is because it is a fundamental part of your identity as an American. And I shouldn't say most, but many, many countries, that is prohibited.
That's true. That's right.
Right. And just as you are, proud to exhibit your right to vote, your right to, to speak openly, freedom of speech, you should also you should learn about and enjoy your right to protest. But to answer your question.
Got it. I'm going to do it now. Sold.
Make a poster and get out there, and you will find, you will find freedom in that. But to answer your question, there are a number of things that can be done to move the needle of social justice forward. And here are some of my own personal things that I do. If you ask someone else, they may suggest other things. But this is just things that I do, that I'm proud to do, that I can do. Number one, supporting Black-owned, women-owned, and minority-owned businesses.
Okay.
I have a lot of friends who, if you ask them, what are the Black-owned businesses that you support? They couldn't name one.
Yeah, I don't know if I can.
It's important. It's important. Using Black-owned banks and credit unions. You don't have to be a Black person to have an account at a Black-owned bank.
Okay.
But understanding two things about this particular bullet point. The two largest ways in which Black people can achieve equality with their white counterparts is through home ownership and education, higher education. Okay. So Black-owned businesses support Black communities that then support Black families. It keeps dollars in minority communities that circulate longer in those communities and build strong schools, communities, churches. Black-owned banks are often the only institution that Black families and Black businesses can get loans from.
Oh, wow. Wow. What?
Talking about home ownership. Right.
Okay.
Right. There are, if we're talking about Black-owned banks. Specifically with Black-owned banks, they lend in large numbers to Black-owned businesses and to families that are trying to get their first mortgage.
Okay.
54% of Black-owned banks closed between the years 2004 and 2016. More than half of our Black-owned banks. And a lot of that had to do with the 2008 market crash.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important now more than ever to support Black-owned businesses and to open an account, even if it's a savings account. Open a savings account at a Black-owned bank. Put your money in there, let it accrue interest. You're supporting those who will come in and say, listen, I'm a small-time, cupcake maker, and I want to open a bakery in my neighborhood, but I can't get a loan from Bank of America. Can you help me? And those banks are there to listen. And most of the time they're recognized by the federal government as being.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today is because you are so good about placing new ideas in my head. And that's really important to me, that I learn something new and have new tools. And what I just learned is that so I've been seeing a lot on Instagram and social media that you should support Black-owned businesses. And here are the ones in Tampa, and here are the ones in St. Pete, and here are the ones in Gainesville, and that's great. But I didn't make the connection until just now that the reason that's important is because that money circulates back into education. And that education circulates back into the Black communities getting better jobs. And then that circulates into better educated young Black men and women getting better jobs and having a bigger voice, and us being able to support each other in that way. I've always been really passionate about young Black children being educated in the theater arts, because so many of them aren't. And I hadn't really thought about, I can support that by taking my son to get his hair cut at the Black barber. And I hadn't made that connection. So thank you. So thank you.
Yeah. So the next thing I've got down is, so you can donate, of course, to a myriad of social justice charities. There are a lot out there. They all do various different things. The ones that I regularly donate to are the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. I'm a big proponent of donating to the NAACP. The Equal Justice Initiative. So a lot of people will be familiar with that. They're an organization that takes prisoners who've been falsely imprisoned, and they're getting those cases retried so that those people can be
exonerated. I do know about that. That's great, because there are so many Black men in jail who are absolutely 100% innocent.
Yes. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which does a lot of that work as well. They also try a lot of cases of racism and discrimination, and they track a lot of hate groups. The activities and the movements of a lot of hate groups. Southern Poverty Law Center is excellent at that. The ACLU, which we know is at the forefront of defending and fighting for our civil liberties, whatever they may be, across the gamut. And then there's a small charity that I love donating to, that some of your followers may be interested in supporting as well. It's called Annunciation House. It's out of Texas, and they support immigrants that are coming across the border. A lot of the people who are released by Customs and Border Patrol, they release them to Annunciation House, and many times they come and they don't have anything. And so it's Catholic charity that is providing people with a short-term place to stay, clothing, food. They provide bus
Great.
tickets so that while they're in the system and they're waiting for their hearings on whether or not they can stay in the country, they provide bus tickets so that they can get to their sponsors' homes
That's
across
so
the
great.
country. Annunciation House is amazing.
They sound
And
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and I love them, and that's one of my own personal smaller, nonprofits that I like to support as well.
Great. Thank you for that.
And then, last but not least, we got to talk about our political power, right?
Okay.
It's always, no matter who you are, possible to share your voice and your concerns with the candidates, particularly local candidates in smaller elections, supporting those candidates who are going to drive your agenda forward. So you want to look for those candidates who are supporting social justice initiatives and criminal justice reform.
Great.
And you want to make sure that people have that they have funding, that they have volunteers. You don't have to just give money. You can go in and volunteer and canvass. You can make phone calls. You can, and then of course you can vote for those candidates. So make your voice known. The smaller candidates struggle a lot for support. So
that makes a lot of sense. That's a lot of good things. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what about resources? I'm a big reader. I love to read books and articles, blogs. Is there anything that you can guide me toward reading that will help me better understand?
Yes. So there are a few different things. So I'm going to send you a list, and maybe you can post it, or you can attach it to this in some way.
Yeah.
There are a few different authors that I like that across the board, if you pick up anything that they have, they're going to have something interesting to share with you, not only about just the Black experience in America, but also about race relations in America. James Baldwin, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Toni Morrison's essays. She's written a myriad. She's a fiction writer, but she's written a myriad of essays as well.
Oh, really? I love that.
Yes. And then there are a few books that I also wanted to throw out to folks. Robin DiAngelo, who is a white Protestant woman who writes a lot about approaching the discussion of race and discrimination from the white point of view. She's got a couple of books out there, right? One called White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. Excellent book. Also another book by Robin DiAngelo, What Does It Mean to Be White? Developing White Racial Literacy.
Good.
Yeah. She doesn't pull any punches. She's an amazing woman. You can also find a lot of recordings of her on YouTube, where she's giving interviews and giving talks around the country. Michael Eric Dyson, who is a popular television personality, he wrote a book called Tears We Cannot Stop. If you're looking for a Black point of view. Brian Stevenson, who is the lawyer who founded the Equal Justice Initiative, he wrote a book called Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption. And you may remember that recently they made a film starring Michael B. Jordan, called Just Mercy. They made a movie of it recently. And then there's another book called Open Season, Legalized Genocide of Colored People by Ben Crump. Ben Crump is the lawyer. Yes.
Man.
Yes. Ben Crump is the lawyer. He was Trayvon Martin's lawyer, and he came the mother of Trayvon Martin's lawyer, who came to prominence during that trial. He's also George Floyd's lawyer.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So he's on the cutting edge of defending people who have been the victims of racist violence.
Okay. Wow. All right. Oh, wait, you paused again.
A lot,
Are you there?
right?
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
It's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot.
It's a
I'm
lot.
going to send you a list of books, also of some documentaries and TV series. Let's say somebody just doesn't have the time to, if it's a mom and she's busy and she doesn't have the time to, sit down and read, there might be a television show that she can catch, or I can catch an hour episode of this and watch it in order to just
I love documentaries.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
In order to just broaden your knowledge base.
Thank you.
This is our country. And we ought to feel empowered.
And these are,
to handle.
These are people we love.
Mm-hmm.
He was somebody's son, George Floyd. Somebody's brother. These are people we love, and I'm almost 40, and it's taken me 40 years to be this upset. That's a problem, There's a problem, and I just thank you for helping me navigate through my own crud, because I can't imagine what it's felt like. I can't. I'm trying to. So what can, as us white people, what can we do now to make ourselves an ally? What do we do to remain on the right side of this? We can protest, we can read, but what about a year from now? Or what about when the next thing happens and this all begins to be buried? What can we continue to do?
I think my hope is that my friends feel empowered at this moment to educate themselves, and to not be afraid to handle the subject of racism and discrimination.
Okay.
So I feel like this moment is about education. And as you educate yourself, as you become less afraid to really talk about it and engage with it, then you will feel far more confident, should this continue into the future. God forbid there be another hashtag.
God forbid.
Yeah, and then you'll feel far more confident in the future and knowing how to be an effective ally. When I think about myself as an ally, because I do think of myself as an ally. Obviously, I'm a Black woman, so I am a victim of racism and discrimination. But I'm an ally to other communities. I'm an ally to the immigrant community. I'm an ally to the disabled community. When I think about how I'm an ally, I think about, I educate myself about these issues, the issues that are of concern of those other communities. And then I listen and respond. So when the people in those communities, my friends who are in the LGBTQIA plus community, when they say, Darlene, we need cisgendered people out here marching with us for this, then I'm listening to what they're saying and I'm responding in the way that they need me to respond, that they feel is effective. So
got it.
That's what I would ask, my non, POC friends to say, POC standing for people of color, to say, I would want you to right now to educate yourself, follow some people on Twitter. I'm going to send you a list of some great these will be people who are not connected to the mainstream media. But they're people who are on the ground, who are doing the work in the trenches of creating more social justice in America. I'll send you the list of those people. Listen to those people. Familiarize yourself with what's going on. Just immerse yourself in the conversation.
Educate myself. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. It's as simple as going in and typing Google. Just Googling social justice. You
Yeah.
know, and all of the books
Yeah.
have been written, all of the movies have been made, all of the articles have been published. You don't need anybody to hold you by the hand. All you need is presence of will to do it.
Right. My husband is walking in the background. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. I'm immensely proud of you just as a woman and as a mom and as a professional. And you're such a light in the world. And so I appreciate you giving me the invitation to have this conversation. And I hope that, it will do a lot of good. I hope that, people who have questions or people who have concerns, I hope that they'll open their hearts and listen to you, because you're worth listening to.
Well, and I know you well enough to know that if anybody has a question for you, I can send it your way. Mm-hmm. And that you'll be more than happy to answer. I know that about you.
Yeah, to give as many long-winded answers.
No, I don't mean it like that. It just means that you have a heart for educating, like I do. I do too, on things that I know about. This is something I don't know about, So I'm sad that it took this much violence to have me ask these questions, but I'm really happy to have you and so many other Black people in my life that are happy to share. I feel very lucky. I'm going to end by saying what Zeke says to all of his friends, okay? It's going to make me cry, though. Because, the world right now. I'm going to end by saying I love your heart.
Oh, I love your heart, too. I really, really do. I really do.
And, I know we're all capable of changing. I do. I know that because I know I have changed time and time again. And if there's someone out there that is watching this thinking, there's no way I can, change my thoughts about a certain race of people. There is a way.
Yeah.
There's a way to connect.
Yes.
Quicker than you can think,
Yeah. This is deep work. This is roll your sleeves up and get dirty work. And over the course of this, it's not going to feel good. It doesn't feel good to turn on the light and see where you have to work. There's an old story about the women who, when electric lights finally were invented, and so all of these women who had been scrubbing and cleaning their houses with gas lights, and then they all got suited up with electric lights, they turned the lights on and found out that their houses were filthy. I'm like, oh God, the house is completely dirty, And so, this is that word, the work of turning on the light is not.
Yes, that's such a good analogy. That's great. You're right. We're turning on the light, and I can admit that there are dirty parts that need to be cleaned out of me, of the way, no one's to blame, but the world that I was raised in the 80s taught me some things that are untrue. They're untrue. And no one's to blame except the culture. Like my parents are lovely and aren't to blame. My teachers were great and aren't to blame. But it's just, and I work and I work and I work, and I keep working, and I can say that the last time that Black Lives Matter hit us, I didn't understand why it was such a big deal. And there's something to be said about just breaking open a little bit every time until you can see. And I'm able to now see, and I want to be, I want to help. So.
Yeah. We're all in the same boat. I'm in the same boat as you. I have friends who are in the LGBTQIA community who call me on my BS on a regular basis.
Yes.
And I have to say, okay, because I was raised in a house where I was taught that was wrong. And that was an immoral lifestyle. And so I have to keep myself in check. When I have friends who are in the disabled community, I have to remember, I have to advocate for them because they don't have the access and the privilege that I have, you know? And so I need to make sure that when I'm in a room and there's no one who is disabled in that room, I need to say, why isn't there somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing in this room? Why isn't there somebody who is, you know, paraplegic in this room? Like, we need to be able to, we are all in the same boat, and we are all advocating for those who have, who don't have the access that we have in areas. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with learning more and helping each other more. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Yes, good. Yay. Thank you. I'm sure we'll do this again. I hope we do. I'll talk to you soon. Probably right after we end this. I hope it records. I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm sure it did. Love you too.
Okay.